I'm one of the co-founders of Runwise. We like to do this every couple of weeks where we follow a pretty standard format. We start with a review and walkthrough of the product, and then we cover the topic of the day, which today is the massive increase in city steam prices, which I know is a little concerning. Before I kick it off, is there anything other than obviously the topic of the day that anybody specifically wants me to cover today? All right. Well, if anybody comes up with anything, you are more than welcome to jump in, ask questions. Again, the goal is to make it interactive. So I'm going to share this screen. Here we go. So does everybody know what City Steam is? Does anybody not know what City Steam is? And would it be helpful to explain it? Nat, helpful to explain?
Yeah, no idea.
Okay. So a lot of buildings have a boiler, right? Yeah, in the basement or on the roof, or multiple boilers. It burns oil or gas, heats water, and becomes steam or hot water that heats the building. Many buildings in New York City in particular do not have boilers, and the buildings were built with simply a pipe from the city, from ConEd, that has steam coming in directly. You see this a lot in bigger buildings, but sometimes in small buildings. Cody just showed me one that they manage. And the reason that a lot of these buildings have this is that it was cheaper to build the building without having to install boilers. And ConEd and New York State made a big push many years ago to say, why would you want to, when basically energy was free, why would you bother putting in all this dirty mechanical equipment? We'll do all the heating for you and we'll send you the steam. The problem over the years is that because it's essentially a monopoly, and because that steam has to run underground and you lose a lot of the steam on the way, it's become extraordinarily expensive. And I'll just show really quickly, this is a joking image of it, but if you're in New York City, you've all seen these steam cones in New York City. Well, that's steam that these buildings are paying for, literally just going out of the ground. So today we're talking about the fact that ConEd substantially increased the prices of city steam. So not only was it already expensive, but they just announced that starting November 1st, that was last month, they were just that day out of the blue raising the price 14.6%. And then next year they're raising it 12.8%. And the following year they're raising it 11.3%. So over 3 years, they're increasing the price of city steam by almost 39%. From already substantially more expensive than running your own boilers. So this is just a massive increase in pricing. And so we wanted to cover things you can do in any building, but also particularly city steam buildings, to reduce your energy and help compensate for that. So anybody have any questions on this so far before I move forward? Okay, I'm going to continue then. Oh, wait, Nat, do you have a question? No. Okay, cool. So the first thing is, biased opinion here, but obviously whether you use us or another smart, control, having a control will reduce your energy usage anywhere from 10 to 30% on average. The average is about 22%. So if you don't have a smart control and you have a city steam building, this is a no-brainer. You're going to increase your prices by 40%. You can probably cut 20 to 25% of that 40 by simply putting in a smart control. In a city steam building, the way that the smart controls like Runwise work is there's a valve on the pipe that comes in from ConEd. And right now, that valve is usually just controlled by the outdoor temperature, or is just literally at a fixed percentage, which is crazy. A lot of buildings, literally, it just opens up to some percentage and just stays there the whole heating season. So that is wildly inefficient. You want to make sure you have a properly working valve, and then you put a smart control on it, and it'll use indoor temperatures to precisely open and control that valve. The more you can close the valve, the less steam you're taking from the city, the less you have to pay for. So that's a way to save a large chunk. If you already have smart controls in, the next thing, and Eric was talking about this, is I like to joke, with 10 minutes of work in every apartment at the beginning of heating season, you can save 10% on your energy bill. This is absolutely true. The number one cause of overheating, beyond having bad controls, is cold apartments that don't need to be cold. And there are a number of reasons why this happens, but what we recommend is beginning of heating season, or if you haven't done it yet already, a walkthrough of every apartment looking for a series of things. So the first thing you want to look for is open windows. And I always tell the story because it hits close to home. When I first met my wife, I would tell her how something like 15% of windows in apartments are open and the tenant doesn't even know it. And then they complain about it being too cold. And then usually the super just turns up the boiler and everybody else is at 80 degrees and this one apartment's at 68. And my wife literally looked at me and was like, how stupid could people be that they don't know that their windows are open? And I said, you'd be shocked. And so literally a week later, we're in her apartment and we're on the couch and she's saying, she says to me, she says, it's really weird. My bedroom is just always so cold relative to my living room. It's freezing in there. Like I have to always wear like a sweater in my bedroom. I think something's broken with the heat. So I go into the bedroom and no joke, I look at the top of one of the windows and there's a 1/4 inch opening at the top of the window. And I go up and I go close the window and immediately the bedroom is warm again. So, and she has an Ivy League degree, is a lawyer. So I like to point this out because it happens in so many apartments and we way overheat buildings to compensate. Check that windows are fully closed and not just visually. I literally say, go to the top of the window, forcefully try to close it, go to the bottom of the window, forcefully try to close it, lock the window, number one. Number two, window ACs, as Eric was talking about before. You lose a tremendous amount of heat through window ACs. Even if they have those like bumper guards, they're not insulated at all. It's like almost literally having your window open 3 or 4 inches. And again, the common thought is, well, it's the tenant's responsibility, let them deal with it. But for $40, you can get a cover that goes over the thing, or you can get weather stripping in plastic. It's a little bit more complex, but cheaper, that you can seal off that window. If you do that, you probably will save 10% on your energy bill because you can run the heating system less because so much energy is escaping through those windows. So that is the second thing I always recommend. The third is always check that the radiators are open. Apartments, the valve on the radiator is broken. You can't turn it on. And so we overheat the building to compensate. Or if you have a city steam building and you have PTAC units, sometimes the valve inside the PTAC unit gets rusted and stuck. And again, we're producing way too much steam, way too much pressure to heat the building. Checking those things is critical. If you have a 1 or 2 pipe steam building, checking the valves on the radiators, making sure that you have proper insulation and venting downstairs. These are all very low cost, easy things to do that save a tremendous amount of energy. The last thing is in a city steam building, you're usually targeting, usually have a vacuum on that system that's pulling the steam through the system. So you want to make sure that you're pulling at least 6 millimeters of mercury through that system. And usually there's a gauge on the vacuum that tells you like 20-30% of buildings are pulling less than that because the vacuum system's broken. And when that happens, you're asking the city to give you tons of extra steam just to move the steam through the building, as opposed to a vacuum that's working properly is going to pull that steam through really effectively and really heat the building much more effectively. So these are the things we recommend. They sound boring, but if you do them together, in most cases, you'll probably compensate for almost all of that 40% increase from ConEd by getting the meat and potato stuff done to make the building more energy efficient. So that is the topic. I'm now going to stop talking because I've done a lot of talking today. I'm going to turn it over to questions either on this topic or anything anybody wants to ask. Happy to answer them.
Is there anything we can do to be exempt or maintain the current rate of steam prices? Say we install a new vacuum on the roof that's newly made in 2023. Nothing there?
No, unfortunately. But I'm in city steam buildings all the time. I have never seen a city steam building that by default is running anywhere near efficiency. So in most buildings, there's usually a 10 to at least 25% easy gain by just running some of the things I walk through. And like, that is the best bet to sort of compensate for the 39% increase.
Okay. Is there like a good ROI on just installing a boiler, or if it's a smaller building, are there options? Is it sort of good to switch over at this point with this?
It might be in many cases, it might be. If you can, if you have, it depends on the size of the building. I know the building you're looking at is small, but if you have physical space and you can vent out, you will almost certainly over a 5 or 7 year period pay back the price of putting in a boiler. If you don't have physical space, then it's a whole different game. Or if you have no way to vent it out and you have to like bore a hole through like 5 floors, it's a disaster. But if you do, if there's an easy space and you can do it, definitely a win. You can look at, depending if it's a small building, you can look at putting heat pumps in. That can be a little bit more complex because you have to like do more major construction, but it's getting so expensive that there are most of the buildings I know that can easily put a boiler in have or are looking to do so.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Nat.
Yeah, I have a question. 2 questions. One, you mentioned that you said that steam controls are already installed in the buildings that you are in. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
So if you have Runwise, it is a control. So it is controlling that valve if it's a city steam building.
Steam roll. Okay. Because you said that there's a vacuum that's pulsing.
Sorry, go ahead, Nat. I just muted.
Yeah. So you said that it pulls in, and then basically when you have this control, that control will control that how much steam is coming in the building, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And the second question was, you mentioned venting. Could you describe that again?
Yeah, it depends on if you have a 1 or 2 pipe system in a steam, like in a city steam building, it's different. But generally, if you think about like a steam building, right, and steam, and it could be city steam or it could just be like a straight boiler, whatever it is. If there's steam in the building, it's going up through pipes throughout the building and then coming back down as hot water back into the boiler or into the condensate tank. If there's air trapped in that pipe, the air puts pressure on the steam and the steam can have trouble getting through the building quickly. And sometimes you'll see like in a 1 or 2 pipe steam, like a building with radiators, you'll see like one line is really cold. A lot of times that's because there's air that gets trapped in that one line. And so the steam can't make it up, and the steam is making it up to all the other lines. So the rest of the building's warm and this one's really cold. So what you do is you hire usually a boiler service company. There are a couple of companies that specialize in this. If you need a rec, you can ask our support team. But what they'll do is they'll put vents on the main line to allow air to get out, but not steam. And so it'll let the air out properly so that the air moves out and the steam can quickly move through the pipe. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or anything else anybody would like me to cover? Cool. We are going to send this out. We'll send out a video of this either today or tomorrow. Also, if you're on LinkedIn, I post articles and videos. We make a video every single week about different topics. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'll send that in the email as well as Lee Hoffman. And if there's any topics you want us to cover in future versions of this, let me know. Like, we usually get these ideas from all of you, and then we cover the topics that people, say they're interested in. Awesome. Thank you all very much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee. Very informative.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lee.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.